This tutorial is going to be on the centered zipper. A centered zipper has two rows of top stitching, and so you're going to take your 3" by 10" piece, and first of all you'll take one end of each of those two on the long side and run it through the serger. We want to do a seam finish before we put the zipper in because it's our only chance to do it. When you do a seam finish though, do not trim down any of your seam allowance. We need the full 5/8. So once you get the serger stitch on there, go ahead and put your two right sides together. Couple of rules to remember about zippers. We always want to stitch in the same direction. For the centered zipper, we're going to stitch from the bottom to the top every time we stitch. This will prevent your sides from shifting on you. The other thing we're going to do is make some markings on our 10" piece. We are using a 7" zipper. It's important to remember that the top stop needs to be 1 inch down from the top of the raw edge. So I'm going to make a pin mark 1 inch down from the top. And then from that top pin mark, I'm going to measure down 7 inches. There's 6, and 1 more inch is 7. So we're really leaving an 8" opening for that zipper. I like to label my zipper sample. T means top, and B means bottom. So top of zipper and bottom of zipper. That helps you remember that we're always going to stitch from the bottom to the top. From the bottom marking all the way up to the raw edge, we want to do a basted stitch length. From the bottom mark to the bottom of your sample or bottom of your skirt, you want a normal stitch length. So right here we're going to do a back stitch. We are going to use the regular presser foot to do our normal stitch length and our basting stitch. I'm going to just start at the bottom, line it up at the 5/8 seam allowance. I'm going to go ahead and put my needle down. We'll do a quick back stitch at the bottom, and then we'll stitch up to our bottom marking. Then we can take our pin out. You need to back stitch to anchor the permanent stitching, then stitch back to that mark, and now change your stitch length up to a 5. And finish stitching your basted stitch the rest of the way to the top. 5/8 seam allowance. Do not back stitch. Okay, so now we have our permanent stitching at the bottom and our basting stitch from the 8" mark up to the top. This is optional, but I'm going to show you what I do like to do. This will save you a little time at the end. I pop every 5th basting stitch. This will help you unpick at the very end. Now we're going to take the seam to the iron and we're going to press our seam open. Do it carefully if you have popped those stitches because we don't want our stitches to come out yet. Okay, we've labeled it so we know T stands for top and B stands for bottom. You look at your zipper, you want the slider and pull tab on the right side. Then you know, okay, that is the side that faces down. It's important that you put that pull tab up. We want it flipped up, and then go ahead and put your zipper right side of zipper tape to the seam allowance side. I like to machine baste the zipper tape to the seam allowance to start with. See where our back stitch ended, our top stop is 1 inch down, and you're just centering the coil. So you can do that by just flipping the zipper up, and then we'll pin. I'm going to just hold it here for right now until I get the bottom centered. And now I'll come back and I'll just pin zipper tape to seam allowance. We'll do that on both sides. Remember, we're going to stitch from the bottom to the top. So now we flip the rest of the fabric out of the way because we're only sewing through one zipper tape and one seam allowance. Now we're going to switch to the zipper foot. The zipper foot is quite skinny. That allows the needle and the foot to get quite close to the coil if we need to. But remember that we'll be switching the needle from the far left to the far right, and it will go back and forth depending on what stitch we're going to do. So right now I'll put the needle to the far left. I can leave my stitch length to the basted stitch because this is our preliminary stitch. I line the right side of my zipper foot on the edge of the zipper tape. You may notice that your feed dog get hung up. That's partly because the zipper foot is so narrow it doesn't really touch the feed dog. So you may have to help coax it along. The slider is quite bulky, so make sure you bring your zipper tape up so it doesn't wing out. Okay, side one is basted. Now we're ready to do the other side. We still want to be stitching from the bottom to the top, so I flip all the fabric out of the way. Come over here, I need to move my needle to the far right. Now match the left side of your presser foot to the edge of your zipper tape. I'm going to put my needle down. It's better for every time I stop. Once again, I have to hold on to that zipper tape there, that little tail at the top, to make sure it doesn't wing out. Okay, side two is basted on. Okay, those are preliminary stitches. We do not have to unpick them afterwards. Now we're going to open up the seam to the right side. We haven't done any top stitching yet. We are going to top stitch across the bottom and up one side, and then we'll start at the bottom again and top stitch up the other side. This is where we use a little template. I just use 1/2 inch wide magic tape, and it needs to be about 8 inches in length, and we're going to crease it, folding it hot dog style, non-sticky sides together, so that we have that crease in the middle. Then you want to feel where your bottom stop is. We don't want to stitch over that bottom stop. It will break our needle. We want to be below the bottom stop. So just put a pin mark there and then start putting your tape, centering it so that there will be 1/4 inch of the tape on each side of your seam. There we go. I ran out of a little bit of tape, but that's okay. We'll be able to work with that across the top. Okay, so I'm going to start stitching right here, and I'm going to stitch across the whole bottom. I try not to back stitch on my zippers. I like to leave a long thread tail, and I will pull the threads to the back and tie a knot at the end. Because I'm going to stitch across the bottom here, start at the side, I do want my needle to the far left, so I'll go ahead and switch that. I have to change my stitch length back to basic, so I can just hit the clear button. It'll take it back to the default. I like the needle in the down position, and I just kind of, whoops, the needle didn't go all the way over. Start at that corner, so just kind of position it where it needs to start. Hold on to those thread tails. We don't want them to get tangled. And we'll stitch all across the bottom. I'm going to go one more. There we go. Needle is down, so that allows me to pivot. Get those thread tails out of the way. So the presser foot is going to be on the edge of the tape. Now, another little tip, your presser foot's going to want to push all your fabric up like this, and it can create puckers, so pay attention to that. You may even want to put a couple of pins in there if you feel like your fabric's slippery and is going to get away from you. Sometimes I'll just pull on the fabric the opposite way so that I'm in control of the fabric. Okay, and then using the tape as your guide, you'll stitch right on the edge of the tape. We're not going to be able to go all the way up. The slider is in the way. It's big and bulky. So this is why you stop with the needle in the down position before you get to here. If we don't move our slider, we'll end up stitching a big U around that, and we don't want to do that. We want our stitches to be nice and parallel. So now with the presser foot up, needle down, we come underneath, and if you'll just push on that pull tab and slider, you'll be able to open up your zipper enough, get the slider back behind the presser foot, then lower the presser foot, and continue sewing straight all the way up to the top of your raw edge. Now you can go ahead and backstitch if you'd like, because that's going to be hidden in your waist seam. Okay, side one is done. Now we'll finish it off by doing the other side. My thread tail is here. I want to make sure it's going to stay out of the way. What I'm going to do is go ahead and pull on the bobbin thread, and that creates a little loop with the needle thread. So I'm just going to pull that through, and I'm just going to get it out of the way. Okay. In fact, I'm going to just put a pin there, and I'm going to just loop around there so it just stays out of the way, because we're going to tie a knot afterwards. Okay. We want another thread tail. We're not going to backstitch. I do need to move my needle position to the far right. Lower the presser foot and try to line up your needle right where your first stitch began. There we go. Once again, I'm pinning on this side just a little bit to help prevent the fabric from getting pushed up. I don't like my thread tail in the way. I'm going to just flip it back behind. Once again, the edge of my presser foot is on the edge of the tape. Oh, I just made a mistake. I forgot all about the slider. You need to bring the slider back up. The slider should have been all the way up here. So I'm very surprised that I was able to get around that slider. So normally you'd stop here, do the same thing I did for the first side. Pull and get that slider back behind the presser foot. But now since it's already behind there, we'll continue. When you get to the top, backstitch. We're almost finished. We're going to take our other thread tail and we're going to pull it to the back as well. Sometimes it's hard to see which one it is. I think the needle thread is already pulled to the back a bit. Now you're going to take all 4 threads, put them together, and make a loop, and put all 4 threads into the loop. Don't pull on it to make the knot yet. You want to get a pin and put the pin through the loop. That will help guide you so the pin will go right to the zipper tape and allows you to get a nice tight knot there. Then you can go ahead and clip that off. Then we'll go to this top side. We will pull the tape off. It worked as a great guide. And now you'll come and finish unpicking your basting. And because we've already clipped some of our stitches, it will come off quite easily. Finish that, and then you've got a nice centered zipper.